The Stream. Must-see TV shows throughout the ages.
How does a television show with solid ratings, a passionate fan base, and an Emmy Award for cinematography get canceled after just one season?
And not just canceled, but replaced by a series that performed even worse in the ratings. It's a classic TV business mystery, and it's the story of Irwin Allen's 1966 sci-fi classic, The Time Tunnel.
Two American scientists are lost in the swirling maze of past and future ages during the first experiments on America's greatest and most secret project, the Time Tunnel.
Exactly. This show was so beloved that its creator, the legendary Irwin Allen, called it his personal favorite among all the shows he produced. He spent years trying to revive it. Its brief 30-episode run introduces this perfect tension between ambitious creative vision and the cold, hard realities of network television.
It's a story about building something epic on a shoestring budget, and what happens when the people writing the checks decide that shoestring needs to be even shorter. It left its two heroes, Dr. Tony Newman and Dr. Doug Phillips, perpetually lost in time, and its fans wondering what happened for decades.
To really understand the time tunnel, you have to understand its creator, Irwin Allen. In the mid-1960s, he was an absolute titan of television.
A titan under immense, almost unimaginable pressure. The research notes that during the 1966-67 television season, he was simultaneously producing three major sci-fi shows: Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and The Time Tunnel. His production teams must have been stretched incredibly thin.
It speaks to his incredible ambition. He would later become known as the master of disaster for his blockbuster films like The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno. But you see the seeds of that grand-scale thinking right here. He wanted to create epic historical adventures on a weekly television budget.
And the premise was so compelling. A top-secret government project, Project Tic Toc, builds a machine that can send people through time. When a senator threatens to cut their funding, one of the scientists, Tony Newman, impulsively jumps into the machine to prove it works.
And immediately gets lost. His colleague Doug Phillips jumps in to save him, and then they're both lost, tumbling uncontrollably through history. One week they're on the deck of the Titanic, the next they're at the Battle of the Alamo or witnessing Custer's last stand. The problem was, how do you possibly film that every single week in 1966?
This is where the story of the show's production becomes just as fascinating as the show itself. It was a masterclass in creative ingenuity. Let's start with the tunnel effect itself, that iconic swirling vortex.
It looks so futuristic, even today. You'd assume it was some complex optical printing process.
Not at all. The production team built a 9-foot drum and decorated it with cellophane, Christmas tinsel, and wires. They then used a blue screen and clever camera work to create that mind-bending effect. It was pure, practical, almost homespun ingenuity.
That's incredible, and that scrappiness extended to the entire production philosophy. The grand, futuristic Project Tic Toc complex, this vast underground base filled with blinking computers, was designed to be visually spectacular. It was a way to advertise the power of color television, which was still a major selling point for networks at the time.
But the historical events, that was Allen's secret weapon. He had access to the massive 20th Century Fox film library. So for the pilot episode, when Tony lands on the Titanic, They didn't have to build a giant water tank. They spliced in footage from the 1953 Fox movie Titanic.
It was a production hack, but a brilliant one. It gave the series a sense of scale and historical authenticity that no other television show could afford. This reminds me of our conversation about I Love Lucy. Desi Arnaz saw a business problem, the poor quality of kinescopes, and invented the 3-camera setup and essentially the rerun. Here, Irwin Allen is using a library of existing assets, stock footage, to create blockbuster television on a network budget.
It was absolutely a deliberate strategy. The research shows that Allen's directorial style was to spend heavily on the pilot and the first few episodes to hook the audience and prove the concept to the network. Once the show was picked up, he would implement cost-cutting measures, reusing sets, props, costumes from his other productions, and relying heavily on that stock footage.
And they knew exactly who they were trying to reach. ABC in that era was targeting a relatively young audience, casting James Darren, a pop star known for his roles in teen films, as the impulsive scientist Tony Newman was a calculated move to attract that younger demographic.
The sources suggest Allen specifically geared his shows toward the 6 to 11-year-old age group by including things like monsters and aliens that would boost ratings. It was meant to be evening entertainment for the whole family, appealing to history buffs, sci-fi fans, and romantics all at once.
But that high-wire act, balancing grand ambition with a tight budget, has a downside. The research indicates that as the season progressed, the rushed schedules and constant cost-cutting began to affect the show's quality. You can only stretch a dollar so far before it starts to snap.
And it all came to a head with the network. Despite achieving solid ratings, it was ranked 76th out of 110 shows, which sounds low, but was actually considered a success for ABC's disastrous Friday night schedule. The network came back with a demand that would seal the show's fate.
This is the critical inflection point in the story. ABC, which was reportedly under new management, approached Irwin Allen and said, "We'll renew the time tunnel for a second season on one condition. You have to cut the budget by 1/3.
By a third, for a show that was already a marvel of financial efficiency. It was a show defined by its scale, which was only made possible by Allen's clever use of existing assets. And Allen, being the proud showman he was, flatly refused. He believed it would gut the quality of what he considered his favorite and best production.
It's a standoff. The network is looking at spreadsheets, trying to optimize costs across a failing schedule. Allen is protecting his creative vision and his brand. Neither side blinked.
So ABC canceled it. And here's the truly wild part of the story. The show they chose to replace it with was a Western called Custer. And according to the sources, Custer performed even worse in the ratings. ABC swapped a solid performer for a total dud.
This is where the story splits into diverging narratives. Was it a short-sighted network decision driven purely by cost-cutting? Or was Allen being inflexible, unwilling to adapt to the business realities of television? Either way, the audience lost out. The series finale ends on a cliffhanger, with Tony and Doug still lost in time, an unresolved ending that became part of its cult legacy.
But the show's influence absolutely did not end in 1967. It became a cult classic, and its DNA is woven into the fabric of science fiction television that followed. The most obvious connection is the core premise: uncontrollable jumps into historical events where the protagonist has to put right what once went wrong. That's the direct ancestor of Quantum Leap.
Wait, that's fascinating, but the research suggests its influence runs even deeper than just the premise. Think about the narrative structure. You have the heroes lost in the field, but there's a home base support team at Project Tic Toc monitoring them, providing exposition and desperately trying to help from afar.
That's a fantastic point. That structural template, the connection to a home base that grounds the story, is a trope we see everywhere now. It's in Stargate Command, it's in Lost. You could even argue it's present in Stranger Things, with the kids in the field and the adults trying to figure things out back in Hawkins.
And the visuals, too. That huge underground complex with its wall of monitors and banks of blinking computers. That became the visual shorthand for a high-tech sci-fi command center for decades. The sources even suggest that the aesthetic influenced the TARDIS console room in Doctor Who.
It created a blueprint. The time tunnel proved you could do high-concept, historical science fiction on a weekly basis. It might have only lasted one season, but through its creative production, ambitious storytelling, and unresolved ending, it left this incredible, enduring legacy. It was a true one-season wonder that just kept traveling through time, influencing television long after it went off the air.